Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the May 12th Education Committee. Before we get started with the formal agenda, I'd like to open it up to audience recognition on agenda items only. There'll be opportunity at the end for audience recognition on any issue. So is there anyone who'd like to speak now? Okay, then we will move on, and I will turn it over to Dr. McKinley.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone. Excuse me. I had Novocaine a little earlier today. Welcome to the May Education Committee meeting. We have two really important topics, and I appreciate people being here for them. The first is an update on the strategic planning process, which is well underway and engages many, many people, and that is under the direction of Dr. Marseille, and so he's going to do that report, and then we are going to talk about professional learning communities, and we have people here from Welsh Valley and from Lower Merion. So Dr. Marseille.
Thank you. I will be as brief as Wagner Marseille can be brief. Really quickly, to give you an update, obviously there's a lot of activities that happen between board meetings with regards to our strategic plan. So I want to really walk you through quickly some of the activities. I have a couple of slides, and then I wanted to bring Doug Young up, who's going to talk a little bit about some of the activities that his office has been really working hard to afford our steering committee members. So on this list, you'll see some activities that we have participated in and other activities that are yet to come, which are identified by the asterisk. We've had over 16 focus group conversations so far. There are 2 or 3 additional focus groups that we are planning for the near future. The one coming up really quickly is on the 15th, Educational Foundation. We are meeting with them during one of their sessions to talk about how they see the direction of the district and their recommendations. We've had 3 open forums that we're very excited about, and after the first one, we started getting more and more individuals out to those sessions. April 27th was extremely impressive on a Sunday afternoon. It was a beautiful day. There were a lot of activities happening on campus, and I'm sure outside of campus, and we had our largest number of community members show up. Our surveys have been completed. We are, this week, will make live our community survey. Doug Young will speak to you a little bit about that. We've had faculty meetings at each of our buildings to give staff an opportunity to engage in that conversation. We've also had numerous meetings with our administrators as well. The board is actively involved and has been with this process, but we had a small group session on May 5th with 3 members of the board. We will follow that same routine on the 13th and 21st. We had our first steering committee meeting on the 5th, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about that. And on Thursday, we have our second, which I'll tell you a little bit more about what some of those activities we're affording our steering committee, and our May 22nd and a meeting. There is conversation, let you know that there's so much information, so much passion around this work with the steering committee that we are looking at possibly an additional date we're going to add before the end of the school year. And then we're going to talk a lot about these immersion experiences and learning journeys that are going to be taking place. Some took place today and tomorrow. But before we do that, I wanted to bring your attention to the list of steering committee members who have volunteered their time for the next 3 or 4 months to be actively involved in this process. So they really came with an open heart and open mind and willingness to help this district think anew with regards to that process. 70 invitations went out. 67 were in attendance on May 5th. We have 23 teachers, double the number that was there in 2009. Parents, 12 parents, double that number. Community members were 6. We had administrators at 14, students at 8. So we have a total of 67 representatives who are at this current moment actively working on the strategic planning process. And I'll tell you a little bit about that in a second in terms of what would they be actually doing right now. And so on May 5th, we really opened up with these 2 particular quotes. And what we wanted to do is to bring the committee on board with regards to the fact that we're only as strong as us collectively, and that this is a collaborative, collective work that will begin the numerous processes moving forward. This is a really quick snapshot of our agenda, and if you look at it, really was from the time we walked into the door and we had greetings, we were actively working with so much of the information that we received from the community. We spent a lot of time, not as much time as we would like, but we spent a lot of time looking at the data. We have 10 members of the steering team who had volunteered additional time to review some of those narratives and to really give a clear snapshot of what the community, students, and parents are saying. They'll continue to meet and share that information with the rest of the steering committee. So a lot of group conversations that were had on that particular day. So what you're looking at right now is a snapshot of what we call Basecamp. Basecamp is a web-based tool that allows the core team, the leadership team, and the steering committee to come together and find relevant information about the strategic planning process. So this is our hub where all the information, all the scheduling, all the documents, the data, the sharing of articles and literature are all uploaded into this website, and each individual has a unique username and password that gives them access to that. There are 3 teams, and each team is able to link into that. We have the core team, which is a smaller subset of the leadership team that meets every week. The leadership team, obviously, you've met those individuals, the 11 or so administrators who meet every 2 weeks to engage in that conversation. And then the link for the steering committee, once you have username and password, they click onto that, and all the information about future meetings, any meetings that have taken place, all the data are available for them. This is the mode that we're going to use throughout the summer to keep steering committee members really up to breast with what's happening after our scheduled meetings. We also will be inviting board members to that Basecamp as well, so you're able to access all that information. So usernames and passwords will be forwarded to you as quickly as we can. And then we really were mindful, and I want to talk a little bit about learning journeys and immersion experiences. We felt that it was extremely important that steering committee members are actively involved in thinking not only about what's happening in other industries, what's happening in education, but what you call really at the edge or the bright spots of systems. So we have immersion experiences that afford them the opportunity to do that. And we had scheduled 4 immersion activities for steering committee members to attend. In a few seconds, I'll show you the 2 that were attended today and the next 2. Learning journeys are extremely valuable and unique because what they do, and Doug's going to talk a little bit about this because he was really instrumental out of his office to putting together some really high-profile strategic thinking and looking at other venues to get a sense of there's some emerging questions that we have as a district. And we want to go out there and see, are there institutions besides K through 12 that are thinking critically about that, or maybe doing those things, or maybe doing them differently, or something that we can pull away to encourage and enrich our thinking. So there are 2 experiences: the immersion, which is taking place in our school district, and I'll talk about that, and the learning journeys that take place in other locations. And we extend the invitation to the board if your schedule is willing to join us at any of those sessions. So immersion experiences. So steering committee members had the opportunity on May 5th to really sign up for these immersion experiences. Today, 2 events took place, one at Welsh Valley and the other at Harrington. A small group, because we only could accommodate a small group of individuals. And a small group were asked to think about some critical questions around curriculum and instruction and professional development. And Mr. Hall, who's here tonight on a different topic, led that conversation, and for 3 hours really spent some time with some community members, walking into classrooms, looking at some of our professional learning communities, looking at the facilities and engaging in conversation. We think that's extremely important for those steering committee members who are able to navigate their busy schedule to see that. Another experience was Harrington High School that was led by Mr. Everslog and other members of our leadership team, and they spent time in numerous classrooms, visiting classrooms, talking to teachers, getting a sense of a snapshot, really, of the work that's happening in our building to better inform their thinking across the board. Tomorrow we have what we call, or Dr. Dory and I would like to call, the deluxe package. Dr. Dory and I are leading a full day session where we will be spending some time at Lower Marion High School, Ballard Kinwood, and Kinwood Elementary, and really diving into a lot of classrooms, engaging conversation with teachers, getting steering committee members to get a sense of what's happening in those particular schools. And the May 14th, Dr. Martino is leading a small group as well through Kinwood. But really, all of these experiences are experiences that we felt were extremely valuable, that provided insight. These were open to all 67 members of the steering committee, even the 23 teachers that were there. We encourage teachers that, if your home school is Lower Marion, and if you haven't had the opportunity, maybe you'd like to go to Kinwood or Ballard Kinwood or another high school, whatever that preference is. So it was open to everyone on that steering committee. So I'd like to bring Doug Young up to go through the rest of the slides, and his office has been really instrumental. I keep saying that because I have to emphasize the amount of time that it took to really coordinate these learning journeys with these organizations that came out of the communications department. So Doug, if you can just briefly highlight some of the learning journeys and where we're headed next.
Good evening, everyone. We have identified some themes that have come out of the conversations with the steering committee and through the surveys and public feedback that are guiding the locations that we've identified as learning journeys. Some of those themes include looking at alternative assessments, supporting students' holistic needs, ensuring that we have schools where global perspectives are shared and appreciated, looking into technology, meeting the needs of all students, project-based learning, community partnerships, lots of things coming out of that. So we wanted to try in 8 or 9 different locations to give people a perspective or some different perspectives on the way we're thinking here around those particular topics. So some of these locations are schools, some of them are not, but the questions, the central questions, remain consistent. Next fab, so there, you can look at the list, and we think we have an interesting balance of kind of some innovative startup-oriented spaces and some tried and true sort of traditional organizations and companies, as well as some institutions of higher learning and pre-K through 12 schooling. Next fab is is called a gym for innovators. With a big focus on design thinking, digital design and fabrication services. And the questions that we'd like to ask when we go to a location like this, how do we create an environment that promotes and values innovation? What kinds of skills will our students need to succeed in today's economy? So at a place like Lmsb, we feel those are the questions that we can kind of focus in on as we get a little tour and meet with folks on the ground there. Science Leadership Academy, you may be familiar, it's been in the news quite a bit recently, a partnership school between the School District of Philadelphia and Franklin Institute. Well known for project-based learning, experiential education, inquiry-based learning. So that will drive some of the questions that we'll be exploring when we get on the ground there. How could we integrate more kind of real-world project-based experiences in our schools, and and maybe create some more opportunities for interdisciplinary learning and collaboration among and between staff, students, parents, community members. Children's Village, really interesting, high-quality pre-K provider in Chinatown. As we look at the achievement gap and programs around the achievement gap, the question kind of coming through in this visit, what would the impact be on achievement if all students in Lower Merion School District had access to quality pre-K programs? Comcast, believe quite familiar with Comcast. And very established organization with an incredible amount of diversity in the services and products that they offer. Kind of thinking about Lower Merion School District as an established entity that's been around since the 1830s. How do we plan for transformational change? And how do we plan for growth? And Comcast certainly has had to do some of that over the course of its history, and certainly growing now. So thinking through things like that, and kind of communications technology with Comcast too, and how that might impact the delivery of content. Delaware Valley Friends School, which is a well-known school for those with language-based learning differences, out in Paoli. And a couple of the questions perhaps that we'll focus on there is how do we address the specialized learning needs of children with learning differences? Of course, we're doing that now. But also looking at different ways to do that and think differently about it. And they also are well known for creating kind of holistic supports in an environment that kind of values holistic supports. So kind of thinking through those topics as we go on our visit there. Down at Penn, the Netter Center for Community Partnerships is the hub for really for partnerships in West Philadelphia between the institution and the community. And as we move forward, we're hearing a lot from community members about the need to maximize opportunities in the community to enhance learning in our schools. And certainly we can follow the lead of other organizations, Penn being one of them, and we're excited about that visit. Drexel is launching, starting next fall, accepting students in their new iSchool, which is the College of Computing and Informatics. And one of the things that we will explore there is how do we identify and make use of data more effectively, and speak with folks in their information systems and information technology groups. And what skills, critical skills for our students are related to information technology that we want them all to have and understand as they graduate and enter into the next phase of their lives. And finally, Indy Hall, which is probably one of the best known and oldest co-working spaces in Philadelphia, a center for startups, but also now established companies. And we want to look at collaboration and how we can kind of draw upon the skills and talents of the diverse skills and talents that we have in our own community to better support student learning. RJ Metrics, another kind of new organization that develops software and solutions for developing organizational assessment tools. And that will be an interesting one for us as we kind of think about developing alternative assessments in our own school district. As Dr. Marseille mentioned, community survey is set to be distributed publicly this week. It's based on the parent, student, and staff surveys, and we'll be getting that out through the civic associations, through our own social media networks, and a community mailer that will also include information about the strategic planning process in the school district. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I was fortunate this morning to be able to go to Welsh Valley for the immersion experience, and it was really fantastic because we saw the professional learning communities and also the interdisciplinary programs. It was just really exciting and energizing to see the kids and teachers in those programs. It was fantastic. So are there any questions at this time?
Just one quick question. Thank you. That was really, I think, brought us up to date. How will the community access the survey? Like if I've had people ask me, how do I tell them, will they go to the school district website and then there'll be a link for community to do the survey, the community survey?
Yes, we will add it to the website as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, our presentation on professional learning communities, Mr. Hall. And
yes, really quickly, so I can let the superstars do their thing. 2 years ago, Ms. Hockfield presented to the board to talk about ninth grade teaming and the changes that have taken place at Lower Merion High School around ninth grade teaming and professional learning communities. And we had a great discussion about some of the good things that she was seeing. Sean Hughes, obviously the building principal, and the teachers involved in that process. I had the opportunity to begin that journey with Lower Merion High School when I was an assistant principal, and to continue this work on professional learning communities that have been an integral part of our professional development or professional learning series. Chris Hall has been intimately involved in the processes as well, not only in this district, but previously before he came to us, and has embraced PLCs as a way of thinking, a way of doing in terms of getting teachers to really spend time reflecting and thinking around their collective work. And if obviously we're all aware on the assault on public education the last 2 or 3 years, with obviously standardized testing, with teacher effectiveness, looking at teacher evaluation based on a numerical value, and the need for teachers to spend time really collaborating and thinking is at an all-time high, and we want to afford our teachers that opportunity. So our secondary principals for the last 3 or 4 years have been actively involved in learning about PLCs, engaging in that work, and I wanted to give them an opportunity, Ms. Hockfield and Mr. Hall, to speak to you about what that looks like in their respective buildings. So with that, Ms. Hockfield and Chris Hall. Mr. Hall.
Thank you. I had the pleasure of being in the boardroom a couple days ago with a group of ninth grade teachers for a small presentation for the curriculum committee. And having the teachers here is a really important piece of this. So I hope that the next time we do this, we'll have some teachers here with us as well, because hearing their voices, particularly at a high school level, is just really brings this to life. So as Dr. Marseille said, we embarked on this many years ago. Kind of in a conference room over at Lower Merion High School. It's kind of what we did after school, is we'd all sit around and say, what could this look like? Because high schools generally, at least when I started, which was a long time ago, high schools looked like you came into your classroom as a teacher, you quickly at 7:30 closed your door, you came out in between periods to maybe walk in the hallway a little bit, you talked to the person next to you, but that was about it. Your classroom was your domain, you did your thing, you were on stage all day, and at 3 o'clock or so, you were finished. So we realized that that's not the way a high school should look, and that collaboration is so important. So when we embarked on these discussions on professional learning communities, we started with this quote, and we've used it now for 4 years. We talk about it all the time. And it really has to do with teachers growing through dialogue with their peers and having ongoing study, ongoing reflection about what they do every day. Kind of the way, as we always say, the real world works. You get to talk to other people. You get to reflect upon what you did with a group of students in a classroom. And it's really been the key to, at least at Lower Merion High School, understanding our work. And I love the part about it's not just teachers being born teachers. Lots of us love being on stage, and that's part of teaching, but that's not really what it's about. And this is really what started our work. Mr. Hall?
Really excited to have this opportunity to connect with you this evening around our work, because I really believe that this work around developing strong professional learning communities is extremely critical in terms of our efforts to make sure that we're providing a world-class education to each and every student and doing a great job in terms of meeting individual learning needs. And excited that the 4 secondary schools, the 2 middle schools and 2 high schools, have been arriving at some common language and a common definition about what it means to be a strong, effective professional learning community. So this definition that you see on the slide here is the definition according to Rick and Becky Dufour, 2 outstanding educators that are world-renowned. And the definition is just that. It's a group of educators that come together and are committed to collaborating in the efforts to ensure that each and every student learns what's essential to be learned at each grade level. The power in this is that educators have an opportunity to hold each other accountable and to motivate each other and to learn from each other. The beauty in it is that every educator that enters our district has a collaborative culture into which they enter that allows them to learn from their peers. And every individual student gets an opportunity to get the best of what all of our teachers have to offer, not just the best of what their individual 6th grade math teacher, for example, has to offer. Really, really powerful. And at the secondary level, you should know that you have 2 middle schools and 2 high schools that are working to develop strong PLCs. I think it's important for me to draw a distinction between 2 different types of collaboration, and I think this will help to sort of frame what Marcy will talk about as the high school model for PLCs versus the middle school model for professional learning communities. So I want to draw a distinction between intra-disciplinary collaboration and interdisciplinary collaboration. So what you see on the left-hand side, that intra-disciplinary collaboration refers to collaboration between teachers that teach the same course or the same subject. Incredibly valuable. So if I'm struggling to teach geometry, for example, extremely valuable for me to have the opportunity to meet on a regular basis with other people that are struggling to plan carefully for the teaching of geometry. We can all benefit from that collaborative planning, and that's what intra-disciplinary collaboration looks like. Our high schools, both of them, have a long-standing tradition of models for intra-disciplinary collaborations. Most high schools do, because it's a departmentalized model. So what Marcy and her administrative team realized a couple years ago was that there was potential to really augment that program by creating also opportunities for interdisciplinary collaboration as well. And so the collaboration that you'll hear Marcy talk about in a minute speaks to that potential to have teachers that share the same students but teach different content to collaborate with each other. Incredible benefits there are that not only can teachers support each other with meeting the academic needs of students, but they can also get to know students intimately in terms of behavioral needs, in terms of social emotional learning needs, in terms of supports that are beneficial for students across all content areas. At the middle school level, we have a long-standing tradition of a middle school teaming model, which is interdisciplinary in nature. So the need on our end for Jason Ponton and myself at the 2 middle schools was to augment our program by creating regular opportunities for our teachers to collaborate within the discipline. So teachers that teach 8th grade algebra, giving them an opportunity on a weekly basis to come together to plan instruction together, to plan for intervention for students that might need it together. So I think it's important to draw that distinction. So the PLCs that you hear Marcy speak to in a minute will speak to that interdisciplinary support for teachers as they work to support our students.
Regardless of what type of PLC professional learning community you have in a school, whether it is a team collaboration, interdisciplinary, whether it's all Algebra 1 teachers, all chemistry teachers, there are 5 guiding questions that are the overarching questions of any professional learning community. What do students need to know and be able to do? How will we know when they've learned it? What will we do if they haven't learned it? What process will be put in place to ensure that students receive additional support for learning in a way that's timely, precise, and diagnostic? And what will we do if they already know it? So every 4 days for 55 minutes at Lower Merion and Harriton High School, an English teacher, a social studies teacher, a science teacher, a math teacher, a special education teacher, a guidance counselor, and in my case, for 9th grade, myself, we meet. We come into a room, we all teach, we all work with the same group of students. And when we get to those meetings, rather than just rehashing, Johnny's not doing their homework, oh well, let's talk about that. Or we heard this, it's not that. It's these questions. Who are these students that we're working with? And what do these students need to know? How do we know if they know it? What are we going to do if they already know it? Let's look at an individual student who's struggling, and rather than just saying students not doing their homework, let's look at reasons why. Let's get them the immediate, effective, precise help that they need to be able to move on. We've really focused very hard on making things, instead of doing things in a remedial way, doing things proactively. We saw something. We know that this student is going to struggle with this. Let's put the supports in place so that that doesn't occur. We use our time to bring parents in. It's wonderful in a high school. In previous years, the time to bring parents in a high school is during the 3 conference nights a year, and each teacher gets 8 slots. They teach 120 students. We use our meeting time to bring a parent in. We have a protocol for how we do it with their student to talk about just these questions. So in either kind of a PLC, these are the questions that we focus on. For us, we really talk a lot about what does it mean to be a team member, because as I opened with, teaching high school used to be something that you did pretty much in isolation. So being on a team is different for high school teachers. They've always seen themselves as content experts. I teach chemistry. Not I teach students, but I teach chemistry. I teach social studies. So what we did when we created our interdisciplinary team is we talked about what does it mean to be on a team. And we created policies and protocol and what kinds of supports we were going to give, what kind of data we were going to look at. But number 6 to us is the key, that at every meeting, bringing your mind, heart, and feet. That's important. And really important is we close the computers. Not easy. We call each other out when we see that somebody is drifting and they're not really there. And it's hard because teachers have a lot to do. We all do in a course of a day. But that bringing your mind, heart, and feet to every meeting is really important. The journey that I'm going to do this pretty quickly. The journey that Lower Merion High School went on was a really unique one. Lots of conversation with administrators, lots of talk about what this could look like. But it all started with Sean Hughes, the principal, saying over a summer, I want every teacher in the building to read Carol Dweck's Mindset. And we came back in September knowing that our faculty had read that book, and we talked about it for a year. What does it mean to change the mindset of a teacher in a high school? In a high school that's successful. And that's a hard notion for people to grasp. We've done really well, but we haven't done really well for everyone, and we could do things better. So it started with the reading of Mindset. It started building capacity in teachers. We spent a year training teacher leaders because you can't do this. Chris Hall, myself, Sean Hughes, the most gifted administrators can't do this alone. This is how do you get teachers to step up and to become leaders, and we spent a year on that. We read some seminal works on PLCs, Rick Dufour's work, a wonderful book called Opening the Common Core. We did 2-day workshops in the summer that Sean Hughes and we ran for teachers, and we said this can be your PRP credit. We didn't know how many people were going to come. In our first year, we had every person teaching 9th grade come, and those 2 days were huge. So that was our first year. In our second year, we really kicked this off. Our ninth grade teams came up with a mission statement, which is up there. It's wonderful. I love it. I love the part that says we believe that all students can do this, and we remind each other of that all the time that we wrote this. And I love the last line that says, we're willing to change what we have done in the past in order to support every individual student in his or her learning. Because again, really successful group of teachers. You have to be willing to say there are things that didn't work. In that second year, we created handbooks and protocol. We embarked on lesson study and instructional rounds. We did team leader training. And this is where we are right now. The fun of where we are right now, not to our scheduler, Scott Kilpatrick, who is pulling his hair out. Because in a high school schedule, it's really hard to build these kind of collaborations. It's really hard for these teachers to all be free at the same time to do this kind of work, and he's doing it and has done it. This year, we brought, for the first time, professional development into the learning communities. So rather than work outside and outside of the school day or on just staff development days with professional trainers, we did it within the PLCs. We brought in Barbara Moore-Williams one session 5 times throughout the year for each team to talk about culturally proficient teaching strategies. We brought in a wonderful trainer that Chris Hall will be talking about, Peter Noonan, who's a superintendent in Virginia, to talk about formative assessments and to talk about instructional rounds. This year, we also embarked on one more step of this, which is teachers getting in each other's classrooms. And it's not easy to do. It's not easy for teachers to critique each other's work. So we came up again with a protocol for it. How do you debrief after a session? What are we going to go in and look for? And because of the Danielson model that we've all started this year, it made it kind of easy. We're going to look at student engagement. And that's what we focused on when we do our instructional rounds. We're giving out student awards this week, which is really fun, and not your typical awards, not your all-A awards, but really cool things that the teachers came up with on their teams, and they're inviting kids into their team meetings to do this. And for next year, which again, I can't believe we have a group of teachers that pulled this off. They used all of the middle school data, testing data, anecdotal data from teachers. And they were able to strategically group students in ways that we think are going to really enhance student learning next year. So that's our next step.
So, as I mentioned previously, we found this within content collaboration to be an extremely powerful complement to what we were already doing with interdisciplinary teaming at the middle school level. And I show you this slide just to give you sort of a picture of how the collaborations are organized at each of the 2 middle schools. So on the left-hand side, you see the Welsh Valley Middle School PLC leaders and the groups that they lead. So each of the teachers that you see on the left-hand side there for Welsh Valley is a leader of a content collaboration, a content PLC team, and they lead 3 to 5 of their peers that teach the same course or subject. And you see that parallel list for Ballackinwood Middle School on the right. And our teachers come together at minimum once every other week, but in most cases every week as necessary to support each other. This is our first year at the middle school level of developing professional learning communities, and we thought it was extremely important that we provide an appropriate level of support and professional learning for all of our educators as part of this journey. So we provided the opportunity for 40 PLC leaders to engage in 5 days of training with Peter Noonan, a consultant from Solution Tree, who's a current sitting superintendent down in Fairfax County, Virginia. That was an invaluable learning experience for our leaders, and what we've done as well to provide additional support is that each of our 6 administrators have committed to pushing into the PLC sessions every time they meet at the beginning of the school year. And so our goal was to gradually build the capacity of our teacher leaders to lead our PLCs effectively. We use Learning by Doing, which is a book by Rick and Becky Dufour that sort of frames our work. And that image that you see at the bottom refers to our vision for providing ongoing support for teachers with sort of a gradual release approach. So as the year goes on, we've been sort of pulling back support little by little, with the goal being that optimal PLCs really are teacher-led. And so by the end of this school year, we wanted to position each of our PLC leaders to be able to lead a PLC, lead their own PLC completely independently, and know what questions to ask to get the support they need from their administrators going forward. I want to show you our long-term SMART goals for the year. If you take a look at our school-wide SMART goals for the long term for this school year, you can see the one that we've committed to at Bala Cynwyd Middle School and at Welsh Valley Middle School. It's a common long-term goal for the year. And you can see that our goal is that by June, all teachers would be able to independently operate in the PLC cycle. And I'll describe what that is in a minute. Below it, you see a long-term SMART goal for each PLC. And each of our PLCs have committed to this SMART goal, that they would engage in the 4-phase PLC cycle at least 3 times, with the goal of being able to come out of this, able to operate completely independently. And so really quickly, I just want to share with you what that 4-phase cycle looks like. Every time our teachers at the middle school level come together to collaborate with each other around their course, planning for their course, what they do is they start out with that first phase, which is the planning phase. So they take a look at and interpret Common Core standards together to try to determine what essential learning looks like for that particular course. Then they develop common assessments. Those might be short cycle assessments like a quiz that assesses students on a couple of learning targets, or it might be a larger unit assessment, and they write short-term SMART goals for student learning for that unit. This is the beauty of PLCs here in phase 2. After teachers engage in that backwards planning and they develop an assessment up front, what they do is the 3 to 5 teachers go out and they teach in 3 to 5 different ways. It's the beauty of it. It's that action research piece. That allows folks to come back when they administer the assessment that they've developed on their own to revisit what worked. So it might be the case that Dr. Marseille's children in his class, they may have mastered 3 of the 5 skills that were identified up front, but with the other 2 skills his students might have been lacking. Well, odds are there's someone else in that room that got better learning results for their children, and we have an opportunity to share planning resources with each other. Did students learn? That's the key question with that third phase, the assessment phase. The 4th phase is probably the most important. It's what are we going to do about students that did not learn, and what about the students that maybe already demonstrated proficiency on those skills. So that's an opportunity for teachers to come together and share resources or support each other in providing intervention to kids that need it, or providing enrichment to kids that deserve that acceleration and enrichment. Teachers are doing an awesome job with that. Teachers at the 6th grade level in math just started a couple months ago to even share students across the grade level. So when they came together at that assessment phase and they realized that there were groups of students that needed specific skills, rather than simply sharing lesson plans for those specific skills, they said, why don't we next week plan to send all the children that need this particular skill to this teacher who taught it really, really well, and then why don't we take the kids that need this second skill and send them across the hall for that period to this other teacher for small group instruction. So they're really just owning student learning for all students, and all students are getting the benefit of the best of what all of our teachers have to offer, and not just their own individual teacher. So that's the 4-phase cycle right there.
So as a district, we know that to make this last, to make this work, we have to build systems to keep this in place. Not just at the 4 secondary schools, but at elementary schools. We need to start talking about what kind of administrative principal PLCs we can have where administrators, principals are learning together. One of the things that we started this year, I went with Dr. Marseille, myself, and a couple others in the district, was we joined a professional partnership for PLCs. It's a neat research organization out of both Rutgers University and University of Pennsylvania. We attended one very interesting kind of a think tank session with them, and now we're doing research with them through online blogs and online platforms. So that's something new, kind of to get out of our own cocoon here in Lower Merion and see what else is going on. In addition, we've talked a lot about Rick Dufour's latest book, which is Cultures Built to Last, Systematic PLCs at Work. And that is, how do you build this system-wide? And as I said, our future challenges are, how do you move this forward? How do you take what we know is working right now and institutionalize it as a district? So, thank you.
Thank you very much for that presentation, both of you. It was really exciting. Do you want to ask some questions for us? Go ahead. Oh,
Thank you for the presentation. Curriculum Committee had the pleasure of having the teachers present with you. So I certainly understand the importance of having that come to light. A couple things around challenges. Always interested in hearing what kinds of things might get in the way of this very important work, particularly around scheduling, and also for teachers who may not necessarily be as bought into the conceptual framework of professional learning communities.
Well, I think it's really, really appropriate that, in speaking about challenges, that the book that forms the basis for our work is called Learning by Doing. I think upfront, in terms of the unknown was a really big challenge for us in terms of buy-in. So essentially, what we were asking teachers to do, we were, Marcy said it well. We were asking teachers that were getting, by all accounts, some pretty good results, with student learning. We were sort of asking them to begin to hold each other accountable for getting great, exemplary results for every individual student. And we're asking them to sort of, be transparent about what those student learning results were with a team of their colleagues. And so those were some of the challenges up front. I think the way that we're working through some of those challenges are, just by living through it and allowing teachers to experience firsthand how many hands make light work. I think they're seeing the benefit, to themselves personally, in terms of being able to leverage the skills of their colleagues. So today we had the immersion experience and, afforded members of the steering committee an opportunity to come over and learn more about PLCs. And we walked into a great discussion. This was 6th grade social studies, and one of our teachers was kind of thinking aloud with his colleagues in a really transparent way, thinking about what would be the benefits of assessing students on style in addition to focus, organization, and content in a history class. So really inviting his history teaching colleagues to sort of convince him, why would it be worthwhile for a history teacher to also give students writing feedback on style and informational writing? Like, is that appropriate for 6th grade informational writing? Is that too ambitious? Like, what should our standard of learning be for our 6th grade students? And one of his colleagues in the room, someone that had maybe more background in the teaching of writing, was able to provide some insight. And great discussion that we walked into. Those discussions happen all the time, anytime you get really astute educators in the room with different strengths together. I think that's one of the great benefits of Lower Merion School District, is just a tremendous teacher knowledge and know-how and talent. So this is just providing an opportunity for us to leverage that and make sure that we share the best of what's around with everyone. Mm-hmm. Sure.
I just want to follow one thing with that, because in the immersion experience today, I thought what was interesting was the elementary teachers were really excited about the PLCs and were saying, oh, can we bring this to the elementary schools? So, and they do to some extent, but they were saying that it's not quite the same, and they were really excited about it. So I think even just teachers being able to see what was going on was really powerful.
When Wagner asked our teachers at a faculty meeting to look at the strategic plan and what was important to teachers in Lower Merion High School about the strategic plan, what did they want him to know? What did they want the committee to know? The number one thing that came up was about collaboration. And I don't know that 4 years ago we would have heard that. The challenge has always been time. It's time in the schedule, it's time away from kids. And I think what the selling point has been, and we talked about this after the first year, after the second year, we'd hear teachers buzzing in the departmental center saying, oh, they drank the Kool-Aid, that group. You know, don't get too close to them. They're buying into all of this. Because they would hear the conversations that were really interesting about kids and about what our group did today, and about the parent that we brought in, and about the email blast that we're sending to all 9th grade parents. And I think word of mouth was really big. I think teacher ownership has really helped. And in saying all of that, there are people that, despite everything, despite, we have a wonderful coordinator who I work very closely with, despite some really tough administrative conferences with teachers, this has been hard for them. And then we just keep working. You know, we go back to the literature, we bring them in again, we have other teachers talk, and we do everything we can to get them to see that working in isolation isn't the way to go.
I have two questions which may, you kind of just addressed one of them, but they kind of reflect the fact that a newer board member, but I'm just wondering, so this launched in 2011, and so are we getting this update now because we're at the end of the launch and planning phase, and now we're in implementation, or is there another 3-year phase of this? And I just want to get a sense of that. And my second question actually is there a reason that this hasn't been launched at the elementary level yet? And was that thought of and discarded, or are you thinking about it now? And maybe this is more for you, Dr. Marce.
Can I answer from here, or do I have? Okay. Two great questions. What we set out in 2011 was really just ourselves having inquiry around PLCs and wanting to learn more about it, and knew that some of the literature that Marcy, Sean, and I were reading was something extremely valuable. But we decided to spend a year researching and getting more information about that. So educating ourselves first, saying, what does this look like? Who are the professionals that do this work? What are the 3 or 4 books that we should read to get a sense of how do we talk to staff about that process? Afterwards, then we began to ask several staff members, you know, we've been on this journey as administrators and we're thinking about PLCs. We'd love for you to come to a conference with us and get a sense of what your thoughts are about this work. They came to the conference. A ball the term, they drank the Kool-Aid. They came back and they said, what literature did you read? How can we get that? And it really was, for us, intentional in terms of building capacity, knowing that administrators alone can't shepherd all of this information and can't lead all of that. So it did take a lot of time to get teacher leaders thoroughly exposed to the work, exposed to schools that are doing this work. There were several field trips to other schools that were doing this, not just in their buildings, but as a district. And then we have gotten to the point where we started introducing this concept to middle school. And they said, we're hearing about this PLC work the last 2 years. Talk to us about that. So they began their journey and saying, well, if you want to begin, here are the 6 books we read. Do not move until you have a foundation around the literature, right? Because everyone has to speak the same language, because building a team is extremely complex. From there, we began having conversations with elementary and started thinking, how do we, now that we've gone through several years of this, the middle school is into that first phase, how do we get elementary to begin that dialogue? And last year at Delaware Valley Consortium for Equity and Excellence, we were asked to do a presentation on professional learning communities. Apparently there were some people who were hearing that Laura Marion was doing some really unique things around PLCs. We brought with us 2 elementary teachers who wanted to be part of that. They became very interested. When Dr. Doria arrived, I began the conversation with her and saying, I know you just got here. There's this wonderful thing we've been doing at the middle school and high school. Once you get kind of settled, I really like to think about having this conversation with you. From there, Dr. Doria, with her understanding of PLCs in Philadelphia, began to read some of the literature that we read. And for the following school year, what we have plans to do is to bring together a small pool of elementary teachers to begin that same design, to say, here's the platform, here's the common language, how do we identify teacher leaders to continue that? Because one of the challenges with PLCs is to make sure that it's just not assistant principals and principals leading the conversation. And in order to do that, you need to build capacity. So we are in that slow evolution because I wanted to be very intentional and deliberate to make sure that people are on the same page and that we read the same literature before we started kind of just throwing it out there across the board.
So this reflects kind of an administrative priority that you're trying to roll out and have the schools and teachers take ownership of, and it's ongoing.
Yes,
Got it. Okay.
and the difference is that, and that was what we didn't want to do, was roll out, right? What we wanted to do was be very intentional on the training, the number of years for the training, the literature, and then bringing in consultants, and then having teachers really comfortable in opening up their work. Once we got them comfortable to open up their work, opening up the classrooms, then the magic began. But if we rolled it out, it would be like, here's what we're doing in 2012-13, go in your classrooms and do it. And if we didn't build that, it'd be a lot tougher.
Okay, thank you for all that context.
Thank you very much. I have a question. If I understood it, right now it's just building to building. Is there, I know realize of scheduling issues, is there any way of thinking this of a middle school team such that what's learned, what works maybe in one building could be translated to the other building? I realize, I think with scheduling, you probably couldn't meet in a day, but what are your, any thoughts on across the district instead of within a building?
Talking about horizontal articulation between both middle school algebra teams, for example.
Yeah.
So that would be our wish.
Exactly.
That would be our wish. So we're actually proactively looking at some different approaches we can take to creating those opportunities next year on a semi-regular basis. Certainly a weekly planning meeting for the for those PLCs probably wouldn't be feasible, but certainly maybe monthly might be more realistic.
Yeah. I'd like to add to that too. To get a little bit closer to what you're looking for, is that for the following school year, we were very deliberate in looking at PLCs from a 4th, 5th, and 6th grade program, knowing that there were some 4th and 5th grade instructional, curricular, and achievement areas that we wanted to improve. So part of the elementary experience for introducing PLCs that Dr. Dory and I will be working on with the rest of her team is to look at how do we create not only a PLC in the elementary schools, but how do we create in a small group that creates opportunities for horizontal and vertical articulation. So that 4th, 5th, and 6th grade team that we wanted to be very deliberate on where we were going to have our entry point were opportunities where we're going to use our professional responsibilities profile, PRPs, to say, could 4th grade teachers from across the district meet to have conversation around what's happening? Could 5th grade? And then really, if I could have my cake and eat it too, is look at ways to bring 4th, 5th, and 6th grade all together at the same time to do this collaboration. But everyone here knows that the school year is short. Professional development time, professional learning experiences are short. So we are embarking on probably are going to be our biggest challenge, is looking at 4th, 5th, 6th, horizontal, and vertical.
I just want to make a distinction. When we talk about professional learning communities and the way that we're discussing them, we're talking about a group of people coming together very frequently and interacting, and they've all made a commitment to learning, a commitment to reflection, a commitment to analysis, and a commitment to mutual accountability. And that can happen in a building in a way that it can't really happen across buildings. So it's important that we have horizontal articulation, but it's not going to get to that same level of interaction and mutual responsibility that we saw when the teachers were here the other day. You're just not going to get there. We need to nurture it, we need to work on it, but it's not going to get to the same place. One of the ways that it can be strengthened, though, is when you look at the model that Dr. Marseille was sharing in the strategic planning process, when you create sets of resources that every algebra teacher can access, from 7 to 12, every math teacher can access, and people have a way to reflect and engage electronically. We are learning ways, by engaging with the consultants involved in strategic planning, to create additional forum for us to work together. And that's a different level, not exactly the same as a PLC, but it's another way to go.
I had a question about the, in these meetings, there's probably a lot of really valuable information that comes out about a particular student. Has this type of format changed the way that information is shared from year to year, from school to school, what's recorded, and how does that work?
I can certainly speak to within a school. What we do, and we're actually just finishing it right now for our current 9th and 10th grade class, is we do something where we call them transition stories. Our teachers have access to all kinds of data. We have worked really hard to understand Performance Tracker and PVOS and Power School and all of those things. What our teachers really craved year to year is something more anecdotal. Let me know about this student. Let me know what works. Let me know what you've tried and it hasn't worked. What is gonna help this student be successful? So what each of our teams in 9th and 10th grade have done is they've created what they call transition stories, where they're about a paragraph, and they're about every student on our teams. And what we do is, my secretary, who's phenomenal, is she compiles them into binders for the 10th grade teachers. So those binders go to 10th grade, they'll go from 10th grade to 11th the following year. Our teachers said the first couple weeks of school, our 10th grade teachers, they were too overwhelming to look at last year. They said, we don't know what to do with these. And the team leader said, I'll just keep them in the room. And as we get to know the kids, I have a feeling these are gonna become pretty valuable. And what we've been hearing all year from the teachers, and in fact, the greatest form of flattery is they're doing the same thing, is that they've really used them and they've meant a lot to them. We haven't done quite as detailed a project between grades 8 and 9, between schools, but we do so many transition activities between 8 and 9 that our 9th grade teams really get to know our 8th graders pretty well before they come up. So I don't know if y'all.
On the same question, for years, our middle school model has facilitated the opportunity to support transition really well through our interdisciplinary teams. But let me just add to that and say that the opportunity to meet within content areas has only strengthened that. So the example I cited earlier of that team of history teachers that was talking about how to provide strong feedback on writing. The folks that were in that room, the history teachers, each of them represented a different academic interdisciplinary team. They all took the nuggets of wisdom from that conversation back to their language arts teachers, the 4 language arts teachers across that grade level, and shared that conversation with other members of their interdisciplinary team. So the two have complemented each other really well. Yeah.
I'm glad I let you go first because this dovetails into that. My question, I have 2 questions also. And again, thank you. This is all very exciting. Just a comment is my question is always, when we get these presentations, we get the folks who drank the Kool-Aid. And so, I'm sure there are some people over there who are just drinking Sprite. And I'm just curious, what the saturation level is in terms of buy-in. But, I don't want to put you on the spot on that. But I do want to ask, and I'll start with Marcy, and it dovetails nicely with Maureen's comment in that something that you'd said jumped out to me, and that you're organizing the students to maximize the dynamic of the group, or I may have misunderstood that. So
Sure.
if you could go
Yeah,
explain that.
let me make that clear. What we did was we looked at testing, we looked at all the information we had from 8th grade teachers. And what we realized is the way a high school schedule works, there's often groups of kids who just get put together based on the schedule. So you're the 9th graders who have honors biology, but you have algebra 2 honors, which means you're basically going to move as a group. Things like that create sections that are not very diverse. They create pockets of types of classes. By really looking at who the students are, we were able to make much more heterogeneous classes. By saying all of one isn't going to make a great honors class, all of one's not going to make a great college prep class. All of students who may struggle with certain kinds of learnings shouldn't be in the same classes. Let's be really careful and really mindful to group students so that they're having a diverse experience in high school. So we used information to do that.
That just sounds amazing, but sounds like a scheduling nightmare.
3 fabulous 9th grade English teachers sat at the table in my office for about 3 days. I just would walk in and out and see how they were doing. And they did a really nice job, and as much as they could do in their first effort to do it, of doing that. And Scott Kilpatrick, in doing his scheduling at Lower Merion High School, just told us that he was able to do a lot of what we asked for.
That's really exciting, because you kind of end up moving from
Yep.
with the same small group of students. So that's very exciting. So then my next question then would go to Chris, I think. And it also was just a little nugget that you had mentioned that I kind of grabbed onto. And you talked about the teachers coming back saying, okay, well, I struggled presenting this particular topic, and you were struggling with this one, and your kids got this, and my kid, why don't we switch around? How much does that happen? I mean, I think that sometimes just hearing it come from a different person can make all the difference in whether someone gets it or not. And I'm really curious that how much are you actually able to do that?
It's just beginning to happen. So it happened with one team about a month ago. It was really, really exciting. So as you know, any leader with half a brain would do, I celebrated them up the wazoo. Like I really did, because while at the beginning of the year, when we looked at case studies of schools that are doing this really well, like we sort of planted in theory, in the abstract, that vision. For what just happened magically last month, I don't know that folks really latched on to the vision in the way that this team did last month. And so it's been really, really, really exciting. And it's been energizing and motivating for teachers. And that shared ownership of all students learning has just been really, really powerful. There's power in sort of a group dynamic. It's the reason that Weight Watchers make so much money, right? It's like there's power in groups of people coming together with the same goal, and it's incredibly motivating for professionals when they're not at it individually on their own. So.
And scheduling that you can make that work, I just envision that also being a scheduling nightmare.
It requires common planning periods. Which I think is worth the investment. But we're really fortunate at this point that we've had that here. So.
Sounds great. Thanks.
And I don't know. I think that everything, and I ditto my colleagues, is very exciting. And I'm just wondering, is it too soon yet with your diverse groups to see those students that are I hate to say challenged or have not. Are not really at the top of the academic level? Have you been able, with the diverse groups, seeing a difference in their performance?
I think we have. I know we have. On a different night when there's lots of time, we'd love to show you the data from our Becton Scholars Program, particularly in our groups that have gone through professional learning communities in 9th grade, and now a group that's going through in 10th grade. Our data shows that students who historically were not performing where they would like, are doing much better, not just in their grades, but in how they feel in their standardized testing. We certainly could share that data with you, and we'd be happy to. I think also the anecdotal data that we've gotten, and we collect it all the time from students and parents, is that the students feel known. And again, it could be another whole night's worth of data, but I could share with you our discipline data, which for 9th grade has gone from up here to down here. Years ago, many suspensions, detentions, extended detentions, all of the things that we know are not the most effective methods for working with students, to almost nothing. Last year in 9th grade at Lower Merion High School, one student was suspended for 1 day. Very different than the data that we would show you years ago. Our attendance data is far better than what it was in years past, and we've done presentations showing that. I can attribute that to, and our teachers can attribute it to, students feeling known, students feeling cared for, teachers not sending students out of class for minor disruptions, taking the ownership of handling it within the class, which we know is what makes sense for kids. So we, certainly given a lot more time and a lot more of your time, we would be happy to share that data, and I know Harrington has very similar data.
And I want to say, as optimistic as Ms. Hockfield is around the data, one of the primary, and I encourage that, one of the primary reasons we joined the Professional Learning Alliance was because we wanted to ask that question. So when we joined PLRA, it was really about how do we accumulate data to show, or can we show cause and effect? Can we show a relationship between PLCs and achievement? And we were struggling with that, and because Penn and Rutgers have been working on that, and Dr. Sokoloff, that many of you know, they brought us together with a group of 15 other school districts who not only come together and share about what they're doing, but really dive into the research and literature. And we'd like to think that exactly that is why that's happening. I told Ms. Hockfield that there's a research paper in here somewhere. I said, even though I left that a long time ago, I think we need to explore that, because there's really some great things happening, and I think we need to connect it to some of the research.
Well, thank you very much. This was really a fantastic presentation, and I think it's just really exciting, and I think we'd like to hear more about it sometime, in the future when we have more time. So thank you. Do you have anything else you need to say? No. Okay. At this time, I'd like to ask if there's anyone in the audience who would like to speak about any issue. Welcome. You can sign in.
My name is Ruth Jenkin. I live at 354 Worcester Road. I'd just like to comment that the sideboard was not on, and we really had a tough time seeing the work at the front. So, without the paper, we don't have no paper anymore. After spending many years in the classroom and working for a higher education program, ironically, I was hired by Weight Watchers to do leader training and evaluation, which is what I do now. And one of the things that I think, a couple of things that I think are important is being able to go out and see what other people are doing and what makes them successful and how they interact with the students. I also think it might be an interesting way to get some feedback is to see what the students are thinking about their teachers and getting some kind of evaluation through the students. What do you like about this class? What did you learn that makes a difference in your life? What is there that is challenging, or what would you change? you're not listening to the people that you are providing all this information to. So it might be something that could be be part of the process. I also was concerned about the booklets of collected data that gets passed on from grade to grade. As a teacher, I often avoided looking at last year's descriptions so that I could make and come to some conclusions on my own about the students. I reference the soft bigotry of low expectation. And that's a big problem when you're reading somebody else's opinion and not coming, to your own. On the other hand, change is always good. Keeping things dynamic and moving and interesting and exploring alternative activities and behaviors, I think is important. But I think we have to look at the people that we're doing this for and to. One other comment is that when the computers are up in the classrooms, what I see is that the students are looking at the computers. When there are no computers, they're interacting with their instructors. And I think we need less computers, maybe more for homework, but less in the classroom so that we get more of a relationship going between the teacher and the student, and not the student and the computer through the teacher. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak, raise a question? Okay, well, again, thank you, everyone. And with that, we are adjourned. Good night.